Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the latest episode of In Conversation with Lee Ryder, the Chief Newcastle United writer here at Chronicle Live. And today's episode, we're going to look at England in the Euros and the big discussion. Should Anthony Gordon start in tonight's game against Denmark, which is played in Frankfurt, England, top in the group with 3 points. Obviously, they picked up that win over Serbia in their first game, Denmark second, and they got a point in their opening game against Slovakia. Yeah, Slovenia. There's my research. Slovenia. You can tell, Lee, that my love for the Euros and international football is continuing at a very high level. But yes, Denmark drew 1-1, was it, with Slovenia in the opening game? And they play England tonight. But the big topic is, Lee, all about Anthony Gordon. Or maybe it's more about Phil Foden and his starting place in England's first team. He didn't have the best of outings against Serbia. Didn't necessarily play badly, but just didn't do anything like he does for Manchester City. And that has led on to a debate in the build-up to this game to whether he keeps his spot. So before we talk about Anthony Gordon, I'll ask you the Phil Foden question first. Should Phil Foden start for England against Denmark this evening?
Well, to be honest, if you'd asked me that question a few weeks ago, I would have said I don't think Gareth Southgate is prepared to make such a bold call and axe a player who he's relied on in the past. But then he named the squad and he left Maddison and Grealish out. So it just shows you that maybe he does have a ruthless side in him. At the minute, we'll wait and see. But I mean, Foden is an integral part of what England have been doing in the last few years. And obviously, he's a proven goal scorer in the Premier League with City. His performance came under a lot of scrutiny the other night. I think there's a couple of pundits went in very hard on him. But I think really England's whole performance, it was reflective of England's whole performance in that last hour. I mean, obviously, we're looking at this now from probably a different viewpoint when you're used to covering games in the Premier League, being right in front of them in the press box. We've got a little look at England at St James's Park, but when you're watching on TV, you're not seeing everything as well as you do from the press box. But really, I think England going to this game, they know they need to improve. But I don't think there'll be any panic after what happened the other night. It was an opening game in the group. They got through it. They won. It was a narrow win. But Foden's performance was one of many that were a little bit off the boil. So we'll have to wait and see what Gareth Southgate does. But at the minute, I don't think he'll be panicking at all.
It's interesting that we're having this conversation, isn't it? Because when you look at Phil Foden, he's such a good player. 27 goals last season, absolutely instrumental to City lifting yet another Premier League title. So it sounds really strange when we're asking the question about whether he should be starting England's next game in Euro 2024. But England were lacking something in them attacking areas out on the flanks. And there has been, as I say, a lot of discussion. And for me, look, people know I'm not a big fan of international football, but I do watch the tournament. I do like watching the games, and I'm going to offer my opinion on England. I would be starting Anthony Gordon tonight against Denmark. I think he offers something a little bit different to Foden. I think he looks much more at home out there on the left than Foden does. I mean, it's City. Foden tends to play as a kind of number 10 with a free role, whereas with England, he's a little bit more restricted. And I think, given that this is a tournament that could be over in the next couple of weeks, obviously they want to go all the way. You've got to play your players who are going to be effective in that moment. And Gordon's form has been brilliant in the position that England need someone to be brilliant in. So, I mean, would you play Gordon ahead of Foden tonight?
If it was down to me personally, yeah, I would have him on the team sheet. Absolutely, I just get the feeling that Southgate, he's just trying to keep him up his sleeve a little bit. He's trying to keep something different up there. That obviously, if England win tonight, then they're going to be pretty much into the knockout stages, and then maybe he has a look at him in that third game and gives him a start, which would be very welcome as well. But for me, it's one where I'm looking at it from a Newcastle point of view. You don't want your players to get injured in tournaments. I'm not going to lose any sleep if Gareth Southgate doesn't want to take advantage of one of the best players. That's me talking from a selfish Newcastle point of view. For the lad himself, it would be massive if he starts against Denmark, of course. And I've got no doubt that he's more than capable of going out there and putting in a big performance, then transferring his club form onto the biggest stage of all. And he's had a fantastic season, proved so many people wrong. And going back to what we were saying at the start of this call, Grealish and Maddison being left out, the reason is Anthony Gordon, because he got that opportunity instead. And, he overtook both of those players last season. And I think had anyone, 12 months ago, well, funnily enough, 12 months ago, I was watching England at Old Trafford against Macedonia, and they absolutely thrashed them in a big win there. And Gordon was absolutely nowhere near it, because he hadn't had a good start to his career at Newcastle. Grealish and Maddison were, among the main players in the England setup 12 months previously, and now they're nowhere near it. They're at home watching it. So it just shows you how quickly things can change. We've seen before in tournaments how someone can suddenly light up a tournament. You go back to Gaza in Italia 90. He lit up that tournament in Italy. And it only takes something in one game where it sets a spark off. And Gordon is capable of doing that. So if he does come in the side, then he's capable of exploding onto the scene. We've seen it with other people in other World Cups, Michael Owen, Wayne Rooney, both exploding onto the scene in major tournaments. And all Gordon needs is that chance. And if he gets it, I'm pretty sure he takes it.
Were you a little bit shocked that he didn't come onto the pitch against Serbia? It was Bowen that came on with about 15 minutes to go. I think a lot of people afterwards, again, from the Newcastle United point of view, were kind of saying that game was made for Anthony Gordon. His legs started to tire, and England were just lacking that kind of intensity that they had in the first half. Were you surprised that Gordon remained on the bench?
No, just on the basis that I know Gareth Southgate, generally speaking, he's not a risk taker. And I think he was happy just to see that game out and get a clean sheet and win it 1-0, a narrow win. That's all he was after. And I was around people who were saying, look, we need another goal. And it was like, well, that's not the way the coaching staff will be looking at it. They'll be looking at not conceding and just getting a narrow win and getting that first win on the board. And, now the dust has settled, it doesn't look like a bad result, 1-0 against Serbia.
Oh, no, you take that win, however it comes and whatever the scoreline is. It's just about getting the wins over the line and making sure you progress in the tournament, isn't it? Is it a straight shootout, do you think, Lee, between Foden and Gordon for that left-hand side? I mean, they've got Eze in as well, who had a very good season for Crystal Palace, but there was a press conference. I think it was actually it was when the squad was announced, and Gareth Southgate was asked about that left wing position, and he directly referenced obviously Phil Foden, and then he mentioned Anthony Gordon. He didn't mention anyone else, which might be paying a bit of a disservice to Eze, who's a very talented player. But do you think it is just between Gordon and Foden for that slot out on the left?
I think he's got numerous options of mixing it up, and there is a strong Crystal Palace influence in this squad, isn't there? With the four Palace players. I mentioned before, Palace had a really strong finish to the season, and Eze is a player that can, he's another player capable of being one of the stars of the tournament if he gets an opportunity. So I think for once, England have got so many good options, and this is a real chance of actually winning a tournament. And Anthony Gordon has got that experience from last year with the England under-21s when he was the star of the tournament and they won it. So he's capable, he's ready, and I think he will get minutes. But I don't know. I don't know how close it is in Gareth Southgate's thoughts. I think he might start conservatively against Denmark. We might see another workman-like performance, and then go from there. Because if we both got offered 1-0 now against Denmark, then you're more than happy with that, because it pretty much takes England through, and then they can really start to warm up for the bigger games to come.
Yeah, indeed. It's a sign of how far Gordon's come, I guess, in the last season, that we are talking about him replacing Phil Foden in the side and not really like raising an eyebrow at it. That's the level that Anthony Gordon finds himself. He's had such a tremendous season. Okay, he didn't score as many goals as Phil Foden, but the levels between City and Newcastle United, as good as Newcastle United finished the season, are slightly different, shall we say? But it's not a disrespect to Phil Foden to be talking about Anthony Gordon in the same breath as Foden, because that's the level Anthony Gordon is at now. He is, he's at the same level as Phil Foden. Do you think, or is that maybe looking at it with the black and white spectacles on?
Well, I mean, we always do, don't we? But I think Newcastle really know that they've got a player that, if he continues at his rate of development as he is now, then the next sort of clubs you're talking about that'll be in line for him are, potentially a Real Madrid or a Barcelona or a Dortmund. That's where Anthony Gordon is on the pathway to. I'm not saying he's going to get there. He's got to go out and back up next season what he's done in the previous one. But if he does, then, if he gets another 15 plus goals and 10 assists next season, then the big boys are going to be looking at him. There's no doubt about it. And Newcastle will then face a fight to hold on to him. Bruno Guimaraes is an example of that. He's used Newcastle as a stage to show what he can do. And now he's got teams like Man City and PSG being linked with him very heavily. It doesn't look like anything's happening right now on that one. But at the end of the day, it's still a danger for Newcastle because the clause is active. In 12 months' time, it could be the same for Anthony Gordon. So Newcastle may be looking to tie him down to an improved deal, perhaps. We'll have to wait and see. But ultimately, for Anthony Gordon, he's got the world at his feet right now, and it's brilliant to see.
It certainly is. It's nice to have some Newcastle United representation in the England squad, and we'll talk about Kieran Trippier in a moment, because him at left back has been talked about as a reason to why maybe Phil Foden isn't playing at his best. But before we go on to that, I just want to prove to any listeners who aren't of a Newcastle United persuasion that this isn't just something that Newcastle fans and Newcastle supporters are talking about. I've got a clip here from Theo Walcott, of course, ex-England international, Arsenal legend, and he is calling for Anthony Gordon to start in tonight's game.
Look, I like Anthony Gordon. I've seen him up and personal. I like the fact he likes to go on the outside as well, not that sort of standard sort of inverted winger. I always feel like he likes to challenge sort of defenders, keep them guessing, and I feel like you're going to need something different. And I think that's why he's there. He's there to provide something different for that squad. So if I was going to change things, I'll probably put him in. I think there's a lot of debate about Phil Foden at this moment in time, who's best to play in those positions. Obviously Bellingham, for me, is a standout player, which then you lose a lot of Foden sort of quality. So I would probably like to see Anthony Gordon, if I'm being brutally honest, because for me he's so exciting, he's fresh and he's fearless. And I think that you need that international level.
Theo Walcott there at Ascot, enjoying a day at the races. But everything he said there, Lee, about Gordon, absolutely spot on. He says he's fearless, he's exciting, he likes to run it, the defenders. We've seen that in the season just gone. Isn't that exactly what England need tonight against Denmark?
I'm not sure they do. I think they need to win, and they need to win it solidly, and they need to get 6 points on the board. That's the way they'll be looking at it. They'll be looking at getting the job done. I don't think they're looking to go out there and smash Denmark. I was lucky enough to be the semi-final of the last Euros at Wembley Stadium. Completely fantastic night, which England won 2-1 in the end. And really, I expect it will be another tight game again. In this one, there's been some tight games in this tournament. So last night with Scotland, of course, getting a point against Switzerland. So it's it's still early days in the group. People are just happy to get through. There's a lot of talk about getting 4 or 6 points from teams. England will fancy themselves to get 6, of course, but yeah, I don't think we're going to see the true fireworks just yet. I think England are just looking to get through. They need to get, for me, this team needs to get to at least the semi-finals. It does, because if they don't get to the semi-finals, they have not done themselves justice in this tournament. And the last World Cup was a big disappointment to only get the last 8, given the talent that Gareth Southgate's got at his disposal. And after that, we then, if England don't win this tournament, it's not the end of the world. I don't think it's definitely time for a change in manager, although Gareth Southgate will admit himself he's had a good run. But I just think that if you don't get the semi-finals, at least, then big questions should be asked.
Yeah, well, a lot of people see England as favourites. I'm not too sure at that. But do you think Southgate faces a problem with Foden? Because, arguably one of the best players in the Premier League last season, as I mentioned, 27 goals, lifts the Premier League title. And he feels like he needs to find a place for him in the team. But Bellingham has that number 10 role. He's absolutely fantastic. So you can't swap Bellingham out and then put Foden in, because then you do lose the talents of Bellingham. And a bit like what Walcott was saying there, by playing Bellingham, you lose the qualities of Foden. And it does feel to me that he's just trying to find anywhere for Foden. I just don't think it works. I mean, you watch a lot more England than I do. Do you see that, or do you disagree with that viewpoint?
Well, I think when you're talking about Jude Bellingham there, that we're talking about players who've got the world at their feet, then Jude Bellingham is that player. Phil Foden has not exactly got Real Madrid knocking on the door for him. He's a magnificent player for Manchester City, and he's obviously a boyhood Man City fan, and he's done very well. But for me, he's not indispensable in terms of would anyone complain if Gordon come in for Foden tonight? Not at all, because he didn't have a great game in that first opening match, and I think really the change would be justified. If that's what you're asking me, yeah, the change would be justified. But I just think Gareth Southgate has got a tendency to stick with players that he's used in the past. Kieran Trippier is a great example of that. He's ended up being in a lot of tournaments. He's still in there, and he's playing left back, so he obviously thinks he can do a job for him. And maybe Foden's the same. Maybe he's one of the players that he sees as he may be doing everything that Gareth Southgate's asking of him. What we see and what we expect and what we want can almost be irrelevant when a manager is asking a player to do a certain job. If he's doing it and he can see it, then he stays in the team. And that's what so often happens in football. We expect things and we want things, but sometimes it's not on the same page as the manager.
Yeah, we don't know kind of what goes on day to day and behind the scenes. I guess, like you say, if Foden's following the instructions, and Southgate will be happy with that. Kieran Trippier at left back, he has come in for a little bit of criticism in this discussion about Foden. Not a natural left back, not all that decent on his left. He prefers to, of course, be on his right. Do you see those criticisms of Kieran Trippier? Are they fair? Or do you think they're a little bit over the top and people just looking for reasons to say this is why Foden's not performing at his best?
Look, when it comes to major tournaments and the England scene, then it's always going to be wide open for criticism. One little mistake, you're going to get absolutely hammered. We've seen it in the past. We've seen some pretty big examples of that. With the bigger stars, like Gaza, Beckham, Michael Owen. We've seen it all in the past that there's no room for error for these guys. And yeah, I mean, to be fair, I thought Trippier did actually a decent job the other night. Went in. It was a no-nonsense kind of job. We've seen him play left back before for Newcastle. He can do the job. I think Kieran Trippier is in the squad for his leadership. He's got tournament experience behind him. he's a great guy to have around. You know, I was lucky enough to get a chat with him just before the tournament at St James's Park, and you know, it showed you what a great guy he is. That, you know, he still found time to come over. He had the whole world's media there, and he decided to come over and talk to the local paper. I thought that was an absolutely massive gesture from him. So he's got all my respect. Hope he goes on and has a good tournament. He won't complain whether he's playing left back, right back, or wherever, as long as he's part of it. And I think for now he remains part of it. And good luck to him.
Yeah, it's great to see him playing for England and another black and white representative playing for the country. And just on the criticism of Kieran Trippier, Southgate was asked about it yesterday, I think it was, and he said, "Ask anyone who plays in front of Kieran. He will tell you the way he communicates and talks him through the game is an enormous help." So that's kind of the defence from Southgate. Not that he's probably even defending Kieran Trippier, probably doesn't even see any reason to do so, but that was his response to the question. So there we go. Gordon in for Foden. I think, is that right, Lee? That's the general consensus between us two.
Yeah, I would lean towards that for the interests of this podcast. And let's just hope that England get the win this evening. That would be fantastic, and hopefully, you know, go on and have a great tournament. And let's hope that it just continues this great summer that we're all hoping to have with Newcastle and England. Been great atmosphere around the city at the moment. Everyone going to watch the games and some good family atmospheres as well. And let's just hope it continues.
Yeah, fingers crossed for a win. Although I do agree with Lee, as much as I'd love to see Gordon start tonight, I don't think Southgate will change too much of his side to face Denmark. Just a quick word, Lee, on the other representatives of Newcastle United in the competition. We'll start with Fabian Schär. Unlucky to score an own goal in that game with Scotland. But that aside, he's seen to just do what Fabian Schär does, goes down a couple of times with a head injury and puts on a decent performance with a few nice passes as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's an absolute warrior for Newcastle throughout the season. Played until his body basically said he couldn't do it anymore. Even when he got ruled out, he wanted to come back straight away, and he did end up playing another part. You know what you're going to get with him. What a signing for Newcastle that has been. We can reflect on it even more now. You know, £3 million, I think it was, that Rafa Benitez signed him from Deportivo from. What a signing. And yeah, another, you know, the deflection aside, you know, he's trying his best just to keep it out, and it's ended up, you know, going in the back of the net, sadly, but it was another enthralling game, really. I think it's been a great tournament, and Fabian Schär so far has been a solid part of it for Switzerland.
And Martin Dubravka, heroic performance against Belgium a few days ago. He has been asked about his future quite a bit, and I'll get onto that in a moment. But what did you make of his performance against Belgium?
Yeah, top class. I mean, I know Lukaku had the 2 goals disallowed, but that's not Dubravka's problem. He's not bothered about that. That aside, I think he made 5 key saves in the match, but it was just more. It was just his presence, really, that calm presence. He's 35 now. You know, sometimes he'll come out and smother things. He's always there when there's a you know, a shot bobbling up in the air. He's always there to kind of smother that as well. So a really good, assured performance from him. Clean sheet, great guy again. And you know, we've worked with him a lot. Martin Dubravka. He's loved his time at Newcastle, regardless of what a few people have been saying in the last few weeks. He really does enjoy his time at Newcastle, and I think the majority will be pleased to see him get that clean sheet.
Yeah, most certainly. And again, he has been asked about his future on Tyneside, and he's kind of shut it down. He's focusing on the tournament. I think the words he used, and you might be able to correct me or confirm, but he used something along the lines as I don't care. And I think that was more because his focus is on this summer and his country. Do you think he is getting a little bit annoyed with the transfer speculation, or is it, like I say, he doesn't care because all he's caring about is the Euros?
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, he's focused firmly on the Euros. I think he knows his future will take care of itself, and the better Euros he has, then the more opportunity he's got to push on. So, and look, I think if he leaves Newcastle now, he goes with the good wishes of the majority of fans, and yeah, good luck to him. If it is the end, then good luck to him.
There we go. Well, this has been Everything is Black and White podcast in conversation with Lee Ryder. If you're watching on YouTube, give a thumbs up, hit subscribe to the channel, get involved in the comments as well. I will respond to them. Or if you listen on the audio channel, thank you as always. Leave us a rating and review. And for myself and Lee, we'll see you guys very soon.